Jeff, let's start talking about North Dakota. What have you seen from them?
Well, start off, I want to talk a little bit about last week, if you don't mind. I'd just like to kind of review. First of all, no new injuries to report. Very fortunate to get out of the Western Oregon game healthy and got an opportunity to get some guys some rest in the second half. The kids seemed to bounce back well yesterday. Did want to kind of talk about our players of the week, our scouts of the week on special teams. A local kid who's been doing an awesome job, probably pushed to not be a red shirt early, but I think he needs it to develop physically, and that's Baloo Chapman. He's done a tremendous job for us, really, both on our defensive scout teams as well as our special team stuff. On offense, a guy who's been running our scout team for the last couple of weeks, had a really good fall camp, Brady McChesney. It was a tough deal last week because he had to kind of simulate two different quarterback styles, and I thought he did an awesome job. And then a guy that we actually moved over from offensive line to defensive line about 3 weeks ago, a kid from Shoto, Denver Crone, who's been doing a really nice job giving our offense great looks. And so that's kind of the guys that don't get a lot of play, but do a great job in preparing us for our opponents. And then on offense, Mitch Herbert, who had a nice day. It was our offensive player of the week. Defensively, Jesse Clark, who I thought had a tremendous week of practice. And his practice habits really improved, and ironically enough, that changed in terms of how he was able to perform on Saturday. On special teams, Joey Michael, the guy was awesome. I mean, I actually just wanted us to keep scoring, so they kept trying to double team him on kickoffs, and it was just fun watching him just destroy those guys. And he's got great spirit, really embraces his role as a really important part of our team. And then our lineman of the week was JP, who graded out at almost 90%, probably had his best game since I've been here. So that kind of puts the wraps on the Western Oregon game. We flushed it yesterday and hit that Sunday reset button, and now we've got to focus on a tremendous conference opponent. When I think about University of North Dakota, I would say they are a ball control outfit on offense. They have an All-American tailback, the Santiago kid, who is as advertised. Really put them on their back, especially in the overtime sessions against USD in a rivalry game last week. I can see why that guy's such a talented player. He has great vision and quickness. And for a guy who's under 200 pounds, he breaks a lot of tackles, bounces things well. Their quarterback, I'll tell you that the Studsford kid, he has been clutch for them. Late in the game against Bowling Green to lead them down, to give them an opportunity to win that game. In the fourth quarter when they were down, I mean, you got to think about this. They were down 34-17 going into the fourth quarter against USD, and they came back and won that game. They were down the entire game against Bowling Green. They just needed one drive. He took them straight down the field, scored. They went for two. Probably should have caught the ball. So he's been very clutch, not unlike the young man from Bryant, Dalton, that came in here a couple weeks ago. Very clutch player. Very impressed with him. When the money's on the line, that's when he's his best. And I think you can say the same thing about John Santiago. We've got to have a code red out there when Santiago's out there. I think that's important. We need a few good men to tackle him. You guys not get that? All right, well, I didn't mean to steal your material. Go up, they throw back shoulder fades too. When they need a play, they're looking for 81, the Staley kid, or number 11. And those are the guys that they're looking for there. Defensively, this is a max pressure unit. I mean, they bring it from a lot of different angles. Very hard team to prepare for. They run multiple fronts. They're challenging in terms of the different schemes that you're going to see. They mix coverages. They blitz over 60% of the time. And so they're a high-risk, high-reward type of defense. They make a lot of negative plays, and that's kind of been something that's hurt us on offense, is when we get behind the sticks on first down by, whether it's them getting a tackle for a loss or causing us to get into threatening us and us jumping off sides or getting into a position where we get a 5-yard penalty and end up 1st and 15 or 2nd and 12. That's something that they thrive on defensively, and they've been very good at taking the ball away as well. They've been very opportunistic. In fact, they had an interception late in the USD game that actually tied it to send it into overtime. And key personnel for him on defense, number 95, Noah Johnson. I don't know where this guy's from, but he's got to be a FBS bounce down. You don't see very many guys at the Big Sky level that are this twitchy and long. And so he's a guy that probably was recruited at a higher level out of high school, I'm guessing. Very, very good player. Tank Johnson, nose guard. I mean, he's a legit 6'3", 300-pound guy that's looks like what you're supposed to look like. And he's obviously, I think he has a high degree of football intelligence. You see him kind of getting guys lined up on tape. Their leading tackler is a kid named Connor O'Brien, an inside linebacker. I think the D-line does a good job of keeping him clean, and he can make tackles kind of from C-gap to C-gap. I like their outside linebackers, 12 and 10. I think those guys are a little bit lighter, but they're explosive and dynamic. They're good blitzers. And then in the secondary, they got this big safety, 6'2", 215, this Cole Reyes. He's a big, good player. Physical kid, makes a lot of plays for him in the run game and is a decent matchup guy in the pass game as well. And their best corner is Deion Harris. He's got 3 interceptions on the season, and he's a guy they kind of got to stay away from. A lot of teams have stayed away from him because he's long, he plays the press very well. It's hard to get off of jams. And so this is a real live football team that's coming to town. You know, their scoring margin, you look at it, I think they've scored 82 points on the year. Their opponents have scored 84. So they're a flip of the coin away from being a 3-0 outfit. And I think Coach Swigert and his staff do a tremendous job. The thing that stands out to me is these kids fight to the finish in every game. I think they're well conditioned and well disciplined, and I think that's a tribute to the leaders on that team and to the coaching staff.
After watching the film of this last game, what do you think turned the corner with this team? How well they played?
You talking about offensively for us or defensively?
Defensively.
Well, we've been pretty opportunistic on taking the ball away all year. That pattern continued, and I think that, you know, really the Western was kind of, as I mentioned after the game, I thought we had a pretty good beat on who they were. We knew we were going to struggle running the ball because they got a bunch of 300-pound guys inside, and we have one guy over 300 pounds on either one of our defensive or offensive lines. We have one guy, J.P. Flynn. That's the only guy that weighs over 300 pounds on either one of the side of the line of scrimmage for us. And so we knew we were going to have a hard time moving those guys off the ball, and that kind of showed up. I thought number 47, their linebacker, really created some problems for us. Very good player. And so we had to modify some things, get those rhythm throws going. I think that's what it was. I think, you know, we talked about doing some things, and we didn't do them early in the game. And after we put Chris in for a couple series and put Tyler back in, you know, we kind of calmed down and remembered what we tried to do, what we had talked about doing all week. And when we kind of got back to the plan, I think it really helped Tyler get into a rhythm. And he spun it about as good as you can for about 2 series in that game. And if we can get some consistency out of that, which I think we will, I think he's going to be a really good player for us.
Do you think overall the offense really improved in that game?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, you know, it's. I'm going to say this. I think the true test is going to be this week, without question. This is a team that's, you know, a team that probably should have been a playoff team a year ago. That Coach Swigert and their staff have kind of built this thing over time. They're returning 9 of 11 starters on defense, and a very good defensive outfit. I mean, I think statistically they're one of those teams that's always hovering around the top 3 or 4 in just about every category defensively in the Big Sky Conference. I think this is going to be the measuring stick for us early in the season is this game.
North Dakota has 3 defensive touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. When you have a unit that blitzes like they do, but they can also kick the ball, what does that tell you when you're looking at them?
Well, like I said, I think they're kind of a high-risk, high-reward deal. I mean, they play some zero coverage, meaning they're going to play man all the way across the board. You're not going to have a post safety when the ball pops through the line of scrimmage or you catch a quick slant. There's nobody there. You're banging your head off the goalpost, and that's who's going to stop the guy with the ball. And so, but this is who they are. You know, it's not like they're not trying to manufacture things. I mean, that's part of their identity and their DNA on defense. And so I think they cover themselves well. I think these coaches do a nice job of explaining to these kids, hey, this is the weakness of this. This is how we need to protect against this. And they don't give a lot of those up. I mean, a couple of games. You know, they got popped a couple times against USD. They got popped a couple times against Bowling Green. But it's not like you're seeing 7 or 8 of these a game. You're seeing 2 or 3, and I think they kind of feel like they can live with that because that creates a lot of negative plays for them. They get a lot of tackles for losses with their pressure that they bring. You hit the quarterback a bunch, he starts making bad decisions, especially late in the game. Most of their turnovers are happening in the second half, and I think that's something that you see as a result of some of the shots the quarterback takes early in the game.
JP mentioned Western Oregon, just all variety of things they ran and how that was kind of a preparation for this. Do you see that?
Yeah, a little bit. Western got away from some of that stuff in the second half. Once we got into tempo, but I don't think that UND cares quite as much. I think they're going to roll. It's almost like there's a Rolodex. You know, it's like, okay, we're calling this. I don't care if it's tempo or not. They're not ultra vanilla when you go fast. You can get them into some of that, but they'll still bring their pressure because, again, as I explained, I really just feel like that's who they are. They're a pressure outfit, and that's what they do. They zip and zap up front. They bring those edge guys. They'll pop a Mike or a Will, and they'll play what we call fire zone coverage, 3 under 3 deep, and then a significant amount of zero, which you don't see very often in the field. You see that in the tight red zone or on 3rd and 4th and short, but you don't see that on mixed downs a whole lot.
So how would you compare your 2 quarterbacks, Tyler and Chris?
think they're completely different human beings. You know, you got one kid that's 22 years old that's been to 3 different universities and is, a guy that's mature and really a student of the game, and you got one guy that's should probably sitting in 12th grade English right now, and but he's just doesn't know what he doesn't know, and that's sometimes a good thing. He just goes out there, doesn't really get fazed by anything, and just plays and lets his natural instincts take over, and so it's kind of an interesting combination. I'm glad we have both those guys here, though. I'm really pleased with both those young men.
What are the strengths of both of them?
Well, I'm sorry.
The strengths of each one.
Well, I think I just spoke to it. One is going to rely kind of more on his natural athleticism, and the other one's a really, really good, smart football player. And so I think as Chris grows and learns more of the offense, I think you're going to see his game expand. And I think as Tyler becomes more comfortable with the guys around him, the pieces around him, and we get more comfortable with what he does really well, I think that's how his game's going to expand. But I think if you compare and contrast them, one's true natural athlete, relies a lot on those God-given gifts, and one's kind of a grinder, hard-working football guy, and but he does spin the ball extremely well.
Do you see you playing both of them through the rest of the season?
I do. Yeah, I think this is probably going to be, I wouldn't say a 2-quarterback system, but we're going to have, those guys are both going to play. I mean, Chris is not redshirting, and we want to make sure that we maximize this year for him.
Is it safe to assume Chad's going to be a full go this week, and how's that going to help Tyler in this offense?
Yeah, I think he is, John, and I think that I think it's going to make a significant difference. I think you saw, we have started slow really in our last 2 games on offense, but the one time we didn't was against Idaho, 12-play, 6-minute drive. And a big part of that was when we needed that 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, we kind of had the hammer to give the ball to. And I think that Chad and Gunnar complement each other really well, and one is not quite as good without the other. And so we've got it now. The one thing that's a little dangerous, this guy's been out of the mix for a couple weeks, and we've been kind of throwing some different ingredients into the mix, so to speak. And so, but Chad has been practicing, and I think that's been important because that allows us to continue to keep him in the flow. And so I think that's going to be an important thing to keep an eye on for us, is how that added element of those 2 young men playing together can help us, especially on those 3rd shorts, 3rd mediums, those types of things.
Would you say that you used Gunnar a little bit out of the box because of Chad's absence?
Yeah, I think he was probably the guy we felt the best about in terms of handling the football. But I think Gunnar's probably would even admit he's at his best in space.
Yeah.
And conversely, I think Chad is at his best between the tackles. And so now having those 2 guys together, that forces the defense to defend some other things and gives us some other options. And the kind of the intangible there is just, that the synergy that's created when we have 2 of our best leaders on the field together. And although, obviously tip my hat to Chad for the way he's handled things the last 2 weeks, really, but it's still going to be better to have him out there.
How impressed are you with Mitch Herbert?
Well, it's hard to not be impressed with that guy. He's a cell biology and neuroscience major who's a 3.8 student and can catch just about anything you throw at him, and leads our team in community service. And, I think just about everybody on the staff would say, if they have a daughter someday, that's the guy they want to date. He's a really, really impressive young man, and just the way he goes about preparing, the type of teammate he is, and more importantly, the type of young man that he is, I think that he and his family have a lot to be proud of there.
Defensive line depth's been an issue since basically the beginning of camp. How big of a concern is it now as we get to
big,
start of the
really big, John. That's, especially when you're playing a team like this that is veteran and big. 6'7", 315, 6'5", 310, 6'3", 300, 6'4", 310, 6'5", 300, 6'5", 255, and 6'5", 250 are their tight ends. Our left tackle got called for a chop block on the backside of zone last week because they thought he was a tight end. So I went right to Dylan. I said, if you gain some dadgum weight, maybe they wouldn't think you were a tight end. So, that's you worry about those guys leaning on you after a while. And I think that's going to be something that's important for us to pay attention to. It is what it is. And we're going to find a way to be competitive. And I think those guys kind of like the challenge, and they'll embrace it. But, we've got to get on par with some of these body types at some point in time. And, we're playing a lot of young guys, and that's part of it. It takes a while for these kids to mature. And so, I was talking about this a while ago. I think we only have like 5 natural seniors in our program right now. you're talking about guys that have been here for 4 or 5 years that are just Montana State guys, not bounce downs, not transfers, not junior program, that have developed physically over time. JP's the only lineman in that group that I'm speaking of. Well, he's the only 300-pounder we have. And so there's a correlation there to a certain degree. And we've got to do a better job of creating stability and continuity, especially with our guys in the trenches, because it takes those guys a little longer to develop. But it's going to be interesting. Not just this week, but as we move forward. There's a lot of big physical groups in this conference up front.
You mentioned the defense tested you guys. This will be the first real test for your offense. On the flip side, I think John Santiago and the eye.
Oh yeah, we'll find out if we're any good at tackling this week. I think we've made strides, and it's. I think you can see empirically the results of the work that we've put in, but he's a different animal. At the end of the game, this guy goes back and returns punts and kickoffs. They just feed him the ball in overtime, and he just wills the ball into the end zone. And so I think the two guys that I like just from a leadership standpoint on that offensive side for UND is the quarterback and John Santiago. I think those are guys that, will be tested. Those guys want the ball in there. They got that point guard mentality. They want the ball in their hand at the end of the game. They got 2 of them that want that. And John, like I said, he bounces. I call it pile leverage. He'll kind of get everybody in there. He's not a big physical guy. He can run between the tackles effectively, but he can really create some problems for you by bouncing. You lose leverage on a pile, and he'll bounce it outside, and then he's got the speed to accelerate and create explosive plays that way. So that'll be a really, really important thing to keep an eye on.
This game for the team last year was one of those really mentally tough losses on the road. Do you feel like mentally these kids are engaged and want to really get these kids back? Do you feel like
I don't think that has anything to do with it. I think that a lot of times revenge is just a really overrated part of this, because every team is different. I don't know anything about. I don't have anything against Coach Schweigert. I don't know anything about UND. We're playing 9 true freshmen, and I'm probably in the mid-teens to almost 20 freshmen and redshirt freshmen. They weren't there. They don't have any idea what's going on. Most of the guys that that were there, I'm sure that they remember the game, but I just don't think revenge is a motivator. I think this is a crucial game. As I told our team, I think that as good as this team has played, they're looking at the record saying we're 1-2 and we got to get a win. We got to start conference play with a win. And so there's going to be a heightened sense of urgency, I'm sure, from their perspective. I'm sure they're going to have some game plan wrinkles as they get into conference play. And this is a true test for us, because as a young outfit, kind of in our infancy as a coaching staff and as a program right now under new leadership, I think this is going to be a benchmark for us to see where we're at. And because I think this is a really good team. I think this is a team that's been built over time the right way, with a good vision, with discipline, and I think this is going to be a good measuring stick for us.
You mentioned Keaton Stetzer, the quarterback, being kind of point guard. What skill-wise what do you see on the field?
He's a little bit of a jack of all trades. I think he throws the ball well enough, throws it better when the game's on the line, which is really impressive to me. I'm sure it's probably frustrating to their coaches, but when the game's on the line, that's when he's at his best. And he can run the ball. He's a 6'1", 195-pound guy, kind of what I call the universal football player in terms of his body type. But he's stout enough to be able to plug it in there on some quarterback runs, operates the system very well, and then when they have to use him to get the ball down the field, he's effective.
Is there anything you can gain from last year's tape, or do you guys even bother to look at it, or not?
I watched it. I watched the game tapes just to kind of see identity-wise. I don't see them being a lot different. Like I said, I think this program has been built the right way. They're not grab bag. They're like, this is who we are. We're recruiting to an identity. We're going to play a certain identity. They play a lot of close games. They control the clock. Over 32 minutes in time of possession. They're explosive on defense. They're really sound and disciplined in special teams. They take the ball away. So I think that I don't think I'm going to see anything really dramatically different. I don't think they're going to pull a rabbit out of their hat when they come to Bozeman. I think we can see who they are on film, and they just play really, really sound, good, tough football.
John Walker is a kid who ended up.
Oh yeah. I can see why they wanted him. They got one really good corner. If they had John on the other side, that'd probably make a big difference for him. So, I think that was interesting. But I think this is where John wanted to be all along, because the relationship that he had with Coach Petrie, how he felt connected to Coach Alexander, and so I think that it kind of is what it is. But I think that once we were able to find a way to make it fit for him here, this is where he wanted to be anyway. He'd originally committed to us, and then there was the issue in trying to get him into grad program. And once that box was checked off, I don't think it was a tough decision for him. And I mean, I never have hard feelings about the recruiting stuff. It's you can't worry about the ones you don't get. You just got to take care of the ones you do.
Ronnie Folsom, is he good to go?
Yeah, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. He's, it wasn't a high ankle. It was just kind of a rolled ankle. And the only thing that frustrated me was that we didn't get him out of his pads at halftime and throw some ice on him. He, wore his uniform the whole second half, and we shouldn't have done that. We should have just got him going and try to get him bounced back a little quicker. But Monty's a tough kid. He'll be ready to go. And really Patrick Carroll did a nice job in filling in at guard. The awesome thing about Patrick is he's a really smart kid. And even though he's primarily been playing tackle, he can fill in at just about any position.
But Trayvon.
Yeah, just didn't bounce back quite as quickly from that little hip as we thought he would. So we just shut him down, and with another week, he should be good to go. I thought Damian Washington did a really good job coming in and playing, improved dramatically. Kind of had seen the elephant, so to speak, against Bryant, and wasn't quite as wide-eyed. It was prepared to go in and competed well, and so if we need to, he's ready to go.
Tavon Dodd, he's in the mix there
Yeah,
too?
no, I mean really, Bryce, Tavon, Trayvon, who I can't get those guys screwed up all the time, and Damian Washington, Nigel soon, so we're starting to get some depth back at that position, and so we just need to have some of those guys gain like 70 pounds when we play them on the D line.
Are you surprised at all about the turnover margin? I mean, you look at that plus 11.
Well, it's funny you say that because, I just always believe that you get what you emphasize. I mean, if you emphasize tackling, you're going to be a better tackling team. If you emphasize offensive explosive plays, you're probably going to get that, and that's something that we've talked about since we got here, is how important it is. That was the first thing we talked about in fall camp. It's all about the ball, taking care of it on offense, not giving and taking it away on defense. We talked a lot about red zone efficiency. I go over critical stats with the team on Sundays, and that's one of the stats we talked about is red zone. So, I'm looking at the red zone stats, and I'm going, I don't know if I've ever seen this one. We were 100% in the red zone. They never got in the red zone. They never got inside the 20 one time. I don't know if I've ever seen that. 23 years of coaching. So yeah, you get what you emphasize. Let's hope we continue to get that.